better perspective over there on the left side?
Decided to switch the angle.
That's good. That's good. That's good. We're going to talk about switching things up later today relative to a specific matter. You know, when you talk about switching things up, it is true that sometimes geography can alter your perspective. So over the last 5.5 years, for instance, in my doctoral program, I might catch myself in one library, I might go to another library, I might go to a coffee shop. You know what I'm saying? Just to kind of change the scenery. And I found that helped me. Instead of being caught at home all the time in my little cubicle, sometimes I got to go somewhere else and things freshen up. Have you experienced that? Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm really, really, really excited about today and about our unit this month. I believe that it will be a very impactful month. I hope that our unit last month, it is actually last month, it's August 1st today. Is that crazy? It's already August. Good morning, Anastasia and Kristen. But I hope last month added some value in your life. Yes? No? Maybe? Okay. Well, this month, may the Lord just lead and guide us. Again, I am endeavoring to give you the best of what I've gleaned over the years from others and through my own experiences. I haven't arrived, no one has, but I want to pass on to you the things that I have experienced either directly myself in the context of leadership or vicariously through others, through books and through seminars and conferences. If it is true that the simplest definition of leadership, this was on your test, did you all take the test?
Yes.
Lord, I just pray that you would lead and guide us now in Jesus' name, amen. So if it's true that leadership is, what's the one word definition? If that is true, I'm getting a little ring. And Eric, I do appreciate everything you do here, including assist in this area. If that's true, then everyone is a leader. About 4 weeks ago, I asked a question, are leaders born or are they made? They're both. They're both. In terms of giftings, you know, in terms of temperament, in terms of overall creational design, this is a really, really rough number, but I would be inclined to say that 1 out of 10 might even be a stretch. 10% of the populace born with really true leadership instincts. And again, that might be an inflated. I mean true leadership giftings that God has imparted to them. You know, we all have our bents, do we not?
Yes.
I can tell you, our campus director here in Detroit, Luke, he exhibited leadership at a very young age, 2, 3, 4. I'll never forget, he might have been 4 years of age. We came home from somewhere. We had the minivan. By the way, I've been driving minivans for like 30 years. No complaints, but man, okay. Talk about unexciting. Okay, I'm the minivan man. So this was one of my many minivans over the last 30 years. I've been raising kids for about 30 years now. And we pull up in our driveway. There are some kids across the street, and I kid you not, this is literally what Luke did. Jumped down and said, "Hey guys, I'm here." There's always been a courage to him, a boldness, a take charge. Again, my anecdotal kind of guess is 1 out of 10 actually have those instincts. If you are the 9 of 10 who don't, you can still learn and need to learn leadership skills, correct? Leadership bents. You know, a leader, for instance, say for instance, you're meeting up with a group of people and going to, I wouldn't recommend it, but McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. I'd recommend that. I like them. You do too? Cool. And say there's 8, 9 of you. You know what a leader will do? The leader of the pack will say, "Hey, why don't you guys order, and I'm going to try to secure some spots," without even being asked. They're already thinking. Bruce Dawson exhibited leadership yesterday with me. And as we were leaving, I was just so pleased, like, okay. I didn't have to ask him, Brandon, to come up and help with the choir. I didn't have to ask him. It's automatic. It's instinctual. Okay? But if you don't have that, it's imperative that you learn some of the skills, because you can grow into leadership. I would, I don't know if I was born with a leadership gifting, but by nature of my calling, I've had to grow in leadership capacities. Pastor Jamie, those of you who know him better than maybe our Flint friends, he's got leadership instincts. They're just natural. He's very quick on his feet. That's not me. But I am called to lead, and so I've had to grow in my leadership quotient. And you can do that, can you not? Yes. And it's critical. If you want to be fully used by God to be all that you can be, to be a blessing to others. So if leadership is influence, we're all leaders at varying levels. And our calling is to up our game. Whether we have certain positions, certain ranks now or later, or, you know, just by virtue of where we are in life, we may not have an office, we may not have a title, but we still lead. And what the world needs now is not only love, sweet love, the world needs good leaders across the board. Whether on a softball team, need leaders. Need leaders out there. Leaders who will serve, not usurp over, you know, and dominate and overpower, but leaders who will endeavor to serve for the greater good. That's how Bruce was rolling yesterday. Wasn't an overpowering, it was coming right next to me, seeing a hole and filling it. Okay? That's beautiful. I love to see that. And make sure, Brandon, you compliment him for that. I really did appreciate that. I noticed those things. So we're going to talk about 4 critical areas in improving your and my leadership now and in the days to come, as the Lord continues to call you to new responsibilities and greater responsibilities. So may the Lord lead and guide us. I see that you did receive part 2, yes? Listen, man, you're getting college material here. You're getting your $1,200, and I don't say that with arrogance. You are getting your $1,200 in this course. If you pay attention and take some of these things home, you will not only be blessed, but you'll be blessed so you can be a blessing. And that's my goal, by the way, in what I do, to add value, as people have invested in me and added value to me. It's just passing it on, right? That's all it is. You get blessed to be a blessing. So that said, what I'd like to do is to skip to page 3. I think next hour we will go over at least one of those assignments. But I want to talk about the ligaments, or the ligament of leadership. Ligament, as you can see in your notes, the ligament of, or ligaments of leadership, is relationships. Pastor Jamie's predecessor, it might have been 2 predecessors before him. His name was Pastor Cal Rotz. He was the pastor at Brightmoor for many years, was a board member with this ministry, went home to be with the Lord a few years ago. And one of the phrases he said to me that stuck, it was one of those sticky phrases, was this. You might want to write this down. Ministry flows through relationship. So if you want to be a ministering agent, an agent that will assist and help and support others to be better than who they are and what they are, to go farther than where they are right now, it's going to require what? Relationship. Ministry flows through relationship. So I've got ligament. How many know what ligaments are? How many have torn a ligament? The ligaments are a short band of tough, flexible, fibrous connective tissue which connects 2 bones or cartilages and holds together a joint. So you can have lots of muscle, in your forearm, in your bicep. You can have healthy bones, but it's going to do you and me no good unless what? There's ligaments that are connecting those muscles. Ligaments are critical. And so, for instance, on a team, sporting team, or in a ministry like this, an organization, in a church, you can have lots of Powerball figures. People with talent, giftings, and all that. But it's going to take what? All these people coming together, correct? And finding their place on the bus and moving together. And it's going to take leaders who can do that. But leaders will have as much influence as they have relationship, as much as they are able to connect with others. By the way, I said some nice things about you, Bruce. A few minutes ago, you missed out. I know your ears were burning. So, see, he's here. So Brandon can tell you, okay? I did say a few nice things about him. And some really mean things, too, didn't I?
Yes.
I mean, really awful things, right?
Yes.
Introduction. The greatest skill needed for success is the ability to get along with other people. Your relationships will make you or break you. And the best leaders, Eric, may not always be the smartest, the most talented, but they know how to relate, and relate at all different levels. That's what made Jesus so incredible. Yesterday, for those of you who were with me for the Detroit rally, Bruce, I talked about Jesus' ability to relate to those on either side of the spectrum, extremes. Simon the Zealot, Matthew the tax collector. One was hardcore blue donkey extremist. The other was hardcore extremist red elephant. Okay, politically, those two guys were completely as opposite as opposites could be. Liberal, conservative, one might have stormed the Capitol January 6, 2 years ago. The other, but man, Jesus could connect. He could connect with people. Our success, fulfillment, and happiness depends upon our ability to relate effectively. Do I call this, do I dare say, since everybody's into Qs, IQ, EQ, CQ, there's all kinds of Qs, MQ. Do I dare say there's an RQ, a relational quotient? Jerry, some people have a high RQ. They can relate to lots of different people and can relate well. And there are some folks, their RQ is very limited. To the degree your RQ expands, and can you expand your RQ? Yeah. Learning skills, practices. Can I tell you just one? Just learning to be friendly.
Yes.
Learning to initiate hellos and goodbyes and smiles. John Maxwell, since I've been using him, he talks about one of his good friends who became one of his top leaders in one of his organizations, who at the time was early on in his mentoring and early on in his own leadership. And he still remembers going through the lobby of the church, and actually John was just kind of standing there, and his associate was walking through the lobby, and there were others there, and his associate passed by all those colleagues without saying hi. John immediately, if you know, how many have seen John Maxwell? Maybe a video, okay? He's just very warm. He exudes warmth. By the way, quick time out. The first judgment people make of you is whether you're warm or cold. It's the very first judgment, typically. That person's a warm person. There's warmth. Or that person is a cold person, kind of stiff, awkward. This person's kind of gregarious, kind of nice and friendly. So John, he sees this and is mentoring. This gentleman's name is Dan. It's all public. This is 30-some years ago. And John wanted to pour into him and did. And went immediately to his office. And in a kind way, wow, do you know, Dan, you just passed 3 wonderful people without paying them so much as a boo. You can't do that. Dan learned immediately. And for Dan, by the way, he was more the introvert. If you know John, you've seen him too, Bruce. He's more of an extrovert. Would you not agree? I mean, that dude, he's just like, he's energized by people. And Dan, his associate, was more of an introvert. By the way, you're looking at a trained extrovert. That might surprise you. I didn't even date in high school. I was so shy. Very shy. Once you know, God would call me into ministry to be with people. My best times are with my knapsack and my books and going to a forest or something, and reading and researching. So I've had to train myself to say hi, to ask questions. My mom was good at that. How are you doing? And to be skilled in being interested, truly interested, not Dale Carnegie trying to manipulate people, but just trying to take it and learning. And you know what? Just as you can learn bad habits, you can learn what? Good habits. So remember, the first judgment people will make of you is warm or cold. And some of you, you are naturally more gregarious, friendly, extroverted. Some of you are not. You're looking at someone who's learned. Did any of you surprised by that admission? Okay? I'm a trained extrovert. I can reach my social quota at a certain point in the day, and Lori will say, I'm peopled out. Oh, I'm exhausted. I need 2 hours by myself. Okay? I just want to read, want to think, I want to work out, want to do some mountain biking and just get away. Okay? What did surprise me, just another quick thing, I was in a meeting in Minneapolis years ago. There were about 400 pastors, and the seminar presenter asked 400 or so of us ministers, how many of you would consider yourself more of an introvert than an extrovert? Percentage-wise, what do you think the response looked like? A majority were self-admitting introverts. And the presenter said, I knew that. Didn't surprise me at all. So it's okay. It's good. However God made you, but I'm just, suggesting that you can expand yourself and grow yourself. And you have to. You have to if you're going to be fully used by God. So let's look at how we can increase that RQ. Just a couple more statements. People can usually trace their successes and failures to the relationships and their lives. Our greatest joys typically are found in relationships, right? And our greatest hurts, pains. A majority of those in addiction recovery, a majority, at least 51%. Probably, Jerry, more like 60% or more, are in addiction recovery because of trauma. Maybe the loss of a loved one, post-traumatic stress syndrome over maybe abuse, physical, sexual, some kind of trauma or series of traumatic events. And that's all relationally associated, for the most part, okay? So relationships, again, will make or break you and me. And it will determine the measure of our ability to influence people. How many, by the way, have been in sales to some degree? You understand this, right? It's about relationships. And I can remember Rob, my first house. So this is 2 houses ago. In Redford, Michigan, we needed windows. I'm already skeptical of people, let alone car salesmen and window salesmen. I'm sorry if you were one of those. That's my problem. And we tried about 6 different companies out. Any of you ever struggle with this? Like, a lot of these window guys are hustlers. Some of them are good, okay? And you typically, as a customer, make your decision within about 45 to 60 seconds. Just by the vibe and the feel you have of the salesperson. That quick. That quick. And they can have maybe an incredible product, but if you're suspicious for whatever reason, yeah, you can be too gushy, too friendly, you can look a certain way. I remember one guy came in, I worked, in addiction recovery. He came in stinking of alcohol and thinking, no, we're not going to be doing you, my man. Okay, sorry. Maybe we can talk about a different subject right now. Look grimy, grimy and so forth. It's about relationship. What kind of rapport? Counseling and therapy. About 40% is relationship. Maybe even 50% is relationship. Another good chunk is the motivation of the client. And the other component is the therapy that's used. But the therapy that's used, the style, the approach, the model, coupled with the motivation, can almost pale next to the relationship. It's true with a music teacher. My two oldest had a great music teacher, piano teacher, and she worked hard on developing a relationship with my sons. And guess what? They learned to listen to her. They wanted to please her. They respected her. Isn't that true? Okay. I'm rambling, so I should get going. I think another statement, I don't have this in print, the most useful person in the world today is the man or woman who knows how to get along with other people. Human relations is the most important science in living. So let's talk about the importance of relatability and connectability. Number one, the success of the mission rests to a large degree upon the quality of your relationships. Quality of your relationships. According, by the way, to a study conducted among Fortune 500 executives, think about this. 85% of success is due to relational skills. Fortune 500 execs, those are the top execs. How much did they attribute their success to in terms of relationships? $85%. Think, by the way, about the focus in college. We're training lots of technical skills, which has its place, right? Teaching people certain techniques and how to work certain programs, how to accomplish certain tasks, whether in engineering, whether in marketing, etc. How much time in college, though, is actually spent on growing your people skills? I never took a course in undergraduate that I can recall. I mean, I took some psych courses, but in terms of just a heavy dose of being told, you know what, your success in ministry, by and large, is going to depend on how well you can connect with people. And some people, you know, I'm preaching to groups that I only get one chance. They don't even know me. And so I've got to learn, how can I connect as quickly as possible to this group of people? And by the way, speakers will ask, the first question a speaker will ask is not, what do you want me to talk about, but who am I speaking to? Who am I speaking to? Because that will vary on how you enter into that experience, right? Should. Got to learn to adjust. 85% of the success of Fortune 500 executives is attributed to their relational skills. Interestingly, here's another fact. 90% of all visits to medical doctors are stress-related. About 90%, and most of that is due to relational issues. Anger, bitterness, fear, anxiety, loneliness, all relationally connected. Wow. Archibald Hart, a former prof of mine, used to be the dean of the School of Psychology at Fuller. he postulates that 95% of all stress originates with other people. And our inability to navigate certain social terrain. So if we want to be able to navigate that, we need to learn certain relational skills, do we not? One of those skills is assertiveness. Not aggressiveness, but assertiveness. You know, for some of us, this doesn't come naturally. We can just kind of get squeamish, we can kind of go into withdrawal, and it can just kind of fester inside us. How many of you can relate this to perhaps your drinking or drugging issues? And it's just learning how to be assertive. Again, not aggressive. They're two different things, but how to communicate clearly. But the stress of not being able to say certain things and feeling kind of squashed, and then you develop your own narrative, your own negative narrative, and that only gets multiplied, right, as you interact more and more because you're already entering into situations with a bias. And you just build on, that bias. Oh, it's damning. If we could just learn to be assertive. Couples, husbands, wives, parents with their children. In a gracious, forthright, humble way. It's all about relational skills. Leaders most effectively lead when relationships are open and strong with their followers. All things being equal, people will do business with people they like. All things not being equal, they still will do business with people they like, even if it's not equal. That's why, by the way, people will pay more. For instance, when it comes to grocery shopping, inflation, by the way, is really, it's about 11%, and the average family now is spending almost $500 more per month because of food prices, gas prices, rent prices, and so forth. But I was going somewhere with this. People will shop, for instance, at a grocery store which is higher in price. They might just say Fooey with Kroger's or Fooey with Myers and go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, or they might go to some other select market like Bush's. They're a little more expensive if they weren't treated right at the lower price store. How many can attest to that? Yes. I will. It's not worth the $2 to me, or the $3. That will compound, I guess, over time, but I want to be treated respectfully. Yeah. And there are some stores, they really work hard at that. You know this, Home Depot, Lowe's, and Menards. I'm not going to call out one, but those that sell and keep their people coming, it's not ultimately due to price, it's due to customer service. And people will pay more for that. When there's relatability, when there's kindness, when there's friendliness, when there is service provided. So let me take you down to that LQ, your likability quotient. I guess I put it RQ. Your likability quotient. People will follow you when they trust you and like you. People will follow you when they trust you and when they like you. Trust is created through integrity and sacrifice. Likability is created through warmth. When I use the word warmth, what other thoughts come to your mind? Friendliness, caringness, an inviting way, courteous, kind.
Aware of others.
There's an awareness of others. I heard somebody else?
Respect.
A respectfulness, attentiveness. People will listen when they sense a warmth. Well, what would be the opposite? Cold. How is cold communicated? Ignoring?
Disengaged.
Pardon?
Disengaged.
Disengaged. Boy, don't neglect just countenance. Eye contact. Just what comes out of your face. Is there a smile? Your mannerisms, your gestures. I had somebody comment the other day. I think it was Thursday night. Somebody said, "Man, I marvel at how you can memorize names so well." I work at it. And it's not really hard to do right now, but man, we could have 60 to 70 guys in the program. And my aim was to always have everyone's name, at least their first name, down in the first 24 hours. And when I would go to Flint often, this is kind of pre-COVID, I'm kind of a touchy guy to begin with. I remember walking through the basement there, that room, and I would just go up and down the rows, and I would immediately call out names. "Hey, Dan, how you doing, man?" And I go to the next person, just trying to establish, I know you. Maybe not really well, but I know you. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're here together. Likability quotient. And again, Alfonso, this is a man who was born an introvert. I was so shy, I kid you not. I never even dated in high school. I was too afraid to ask a girl out. I'm also grateful, by the way, my face was full of zits. You know why I'm grateful? That in part kept me off the fast track. Cool. Didn't like it at the time, but boy, that kept me off the fast track. I'm feeling insecure and, just kind of want to hide. And I then began to go into books and dig deep. And I went into my faith with Christ as a young man and took walks. And that grew that. At the time, Johnny, I didn't see that. But I look back and I think, man, thank you, Lord. Thank you. You were preparing me and letting me build a foundation upon later which I could learn how to be friendly and gregarious and like people and truly like them. But you gotta work at this. Some of you, you've got to work harder than others. Some of you, it's just natural. Others of you, it's not. Don't say, well, that's just not me. I'm not that. You will stunt. You will become stunted. I had a man here who was here for many, many years, and he never worked on this. And it really crippled his ability to lead. Good man, a man of solid integrity, but just couldn't get over himself and around himself to learn just how to smile and go to people. Hey, Mike, how you doing, man? I understand, man, you were really hitting well last Monday. And so you're going to be in the lineup tonight. You may not be in the field. I don't know what the field will look like, but you were really hitting well. Okay, you just remember things. And then you begin to engage with people. That's true, by the way. Okay. Likability, by the way, I want to make this very clear, is not about being popular. And it's not about pleasing everybody. Being Mr. or Mrs. Nice. To lead, you will have to make people feel uncomfortable. Applying pressure to move people to places they don't want to go. And if you are a parent, you understand this or should all too well. My youngest, 18-year-old Mr. Johnny, and I had a discussion yesterday. He was a bit disappointed with some communication I had with him. I let him express himself. I said, thank you. I always want to have that openness in our relationship. Thank you. Now let me address the matter itself. And while he may not have completely agreed, he's 18. I get it. But you have to be man enough or woman enough at times to say no, and they might not like you. My goal, by the way, Eric, ultimately is not so much that you like me, but that you respect me. Enough so that as I respect you, we can work together. Hopefully you know that I do have your best interests in mind. I may not always be popular with you or others. But as long as you can still respect me and believe that I do have your best interests, we can go somewhere, can't we? Together. So again, your likability quotient isn't about always saying yes. Okay. Yeah, and let's get some ice cream. Let's go to Dairy Queen. You know, I'll treat you. No. Maybe. Don't know. This is still, by the way, I want to make sure I get this right. I'm still underneath number 1. Someone read that. If you need them, you can't lead them. You forfeit leadership. How many mothers have I seen forfeit leadership with their 13, 14, 15-year-old daughter? They want to be pals now. Chummy. Maybe the wife the mother isn't getting what she would like or need from the husband, from others. So she's going to have a new shopping partner, a new buddy. How many have seen this played out? And that mother forfeits leadership because she needs that little girl. You forfeit leadership if you're an RA, Bruce, or if you're in a position as an intern or as a staff member and you can't make hard calls because you want people to like you. That's an abdication of leadership. Do you think everybody has liked Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs when they have been coached by him? How many of you know Greg Popovich? Bill Belichick? Do you think they're the most likable guys 24/7? But they do work at loving those guys on their team, being with them, hanging out with them, having them over their house, but they're not at all afraid to get in their face. Get out. You're going to be on the bench right now. You can't lead them if you need them. And then that statement. Someone read that. I want to see what you think of that statement.
Takes change to make change. The greater the change, the more change required.
Change. And the 2 times you see change in quotation marks, I want you to think of a pocket full of change. It takes change, a pocket full of change, to make what?
Change.
To make change. So for instance, let's go back in time, Brightmoor. You've seen their incredible facility. Those of you who are in Flint, you know you were part of that men's conference. We go there every week. That's a multi-million-dollar edifice. You know what Pastor Jamie did before that capital campaign that he launched, and during that capital campaign launch? You know what he worked hard at? Befriending, relating, especially to those who are the movers and shakers, the influencers. Some of those constitute deep pockets, people with deep pockets. Others, they just have influence in that church. He knew that he was going to need a lot of change to raise multiple millions for the mission of serving more people and more people effectively. So he worked hard at building those relationships, going out with people, spending time with his influencers. Those, again, with deep pockets, and those who, by virtue of who they were in that congregation, knew they had influence. And if Bruce, he could win them, and again, this isn't about manipulation, it's about good leadership. If he could win them, he could win for the sake of the church and ultimately for the sake of God. And if you remember last week, I said, you know, it's a mistake when we as staff spend the bulk of our time with problem students. That's a mistake. You've got to do that, but you want to spend the bulk of your time with your 2, 3 leaders, or those that have the potential, because they will be the ones to salt and to light that context and expand your influence, which is ultimately the influence of the organization to help people move forward, right, in their journey? Right. So, man, Bob, remember that as an intern, okay? It's easy to get sucked into energy suckers, time suckers. I do not apologize. We had a man leave last week. I know he wanted to talk to me more than once. No, I had other things. I only have so much time. No, I can't afford that right now. You can fault me, you can criticize me, but you only have 24 hours. And of that 24, about 8 of it should be spent sleeping. Okay? So that takes it down to 16. And then you've got other commitments, correct? And so you just think, okay, how do I best spend the time and energy God has given me to serve the people he's called me to serve? How do I do that? Be aware of time wasters. And I hope that doesn't sound harsh. Everybody has value, but some people will just want to suck what you've got. Pour it out. Bruce, I charge you again. And you know that. Pour it into people. Some of those, man, they're just up and coming. And will you experience disappointments? Will you get burned? Yeah, those are the turf. Man, look for them. Because, man, if they get it, they can impact 3, 4, 5 people, right? Wow, and that person, they can impact. It takes change. So the bigger the change, the more that's required of you to have change in your pocket. And how is change gained? By developing the relationship. By developing the relationship. Joe, I have a lot of power with and over my sons. But it came at great cost. You know why? I've invested in them. I haven't been a perfect parent, but I've invested in them. Time, energy, resources. And when Dad speaks, I'd like to think they actually do listen. My 31-year-old He listens. He calls his dad. I invested in him. And I want to help him continue to change so I continue to invest in him. He had 3 services over the weekend that, he's at a mega church and he was the speaker. So we worked on that message together. Hey, Dad, what do you think? Okay. We worked, and then I texted him yesterday, called him yesterday. Okay. Thanks, Dad. Yeah. Okay. It takes change to help people change. And that takes time. It takes commitment.
Yep.
It takes investing in people. So let's stop for a second. I'm not done with the class, but your questions, your comments, what has stood out? What's something you'd like to talk about more?
You just last one kind of reminded me of Moses when his father-in-law said, "You're wearing yourself out. You need to find 70 was it? People to kind of delegate, people you trust, like you said,
Yeah,
trust."
yeah, yes, yes.
I thought it was interesting that 85% of the CEO's leadership was relational. That's huge.
Relational. Wasn't because they were the smartest. They had the best ideas. Wasn't due to technical skills. They were good connecting with people. And because of that, people followed, listened, worked together. Relational skills. Critical. Someone else?
Good leadership, I think, also is, knowing where your most value is at and applying your value also to where you know you're good and being able, like you were saying, delegate it, go, hey, I know myself good enough that I can't lead people right now in this area, and you put somebody in charge of that also can lead you in the same mission at the end of the day. And then once that's done, it's back on you to help delegate it again, and it's always going to continually changing leadership throughout the group of people, where everybody's best values at.
Yep, yep.
And it takes a community.
That's great, Mike. Understanding what you bring to the table and what you don't bring, and understanding what others. I had a huge moment of clarity last week, Wednesday, in a Zoom meeting. John and I and Deonza talking with a former director of an agency, and we were exploring a certain project here, and the question was asked of this director, how much of your time and energy had to be spent going forward to carry that out? And the person responded, and I got out of that meeting thinking, nope, I'm not going to do that, because the best use of my competencies and energies, my experiences, would not be used in that arena. Could I do it? Maybe. But my skills are better used in this arena. And it's understanding yourself and what you bring and what you don't bring, and understanding what others bring. We'll get to that. Number 2, let's just get that real quick. Number 2, you can impress people from afar. You can only impact them up close. You can only impact them up close. You can impress people from afar. Boy, we're in a celebrity-driven culture, right? Lifestyles of the rich and famous. You can impress people by what you drive and what you wear from a distance. But if you are going to impact people, that only comes by being close. Being close. So in terms of your own growth and personal development, what has had the greatest impact on you being you? I want you to think about that. In terms of who you are, what has had the greatest impact on you? Robert?
One of the things that had the greatest impact on me was students through the years. Because I came in here with a brokenness, I had to get over myself. And when people come in, it reminds me when I was here before. And I find that some of the people that come in, I'm like, oh, you know, like, oh, I don't know about this guy. But at the end of the day, I've been totally shocked when some of these people become my friends that I would have nothing to do with.
Good, good.
And the humbleness and the of a broken man, it's like a mirror to me. It just makes me analyze myself all the time.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Someone else. What has had the greatest, someone else hasn't responded yet? What has had the greatest impact on who you are? You're not as talkative this morning.
Being able to realize when you've made a mistake and go into the other person and reconcile with them, whether you're right or you're wrong.
Let me ask the question different. Has it been a book or two, a seminar, a conference, a sermon series, or by and large, has it been a person or two? What's the answer for you? Person. Yep. I'm here because of the investment of my dad, the investment of Dave Itterock, former mentor, and several other people who poured into my life. Have I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books? Thousands of pages? Yes. And I've gotten lots of inspiration, but at the end of the day, I am who I am because of the people that I've had relationships with. Some for shorter periods of time, others for long periods of time. Maybe it was their humility. Maybe it was their kindness, their generosity that inspired me, right? You? We can impress people from afar, but we can only impact them up close. Well, the boldness. Bob Carey. I always, especially as a wannabe extrovert, a wannabe courageous guy. Bob Carey, my former associate, who's now in Delmarva, Bruce's old boss. I mean, I still remember we had some Mormons come through the area. God bless them, their white shirts and ties with their bikes. How many know what I'm talking about? And I said, Bob, can you take care of it? Bob was salivating. Can you see that? Wow. It's like, that's draining to me. Like, oh man, okay. Bob Carey, he was, and that boldness impacted me though. I want more of that. That take charge, go right at it. Bull by the horns. Let's finish this little section. Let's see. By the way, Jesus, I love what John 10:3 says. Jesus knew his sheep by name. Paul, by the way, modeled up close, face-to-face ministry. I've referenced Romans 16 not too long ago in this room. Romans 16, Paul lists over 30 people. Hey, give my love to, greet so-and-so. What does that tell us about Paul? He was very relational, up close. He had friends. He could identify people by name and recall certain histories he had with them. So what do you say we take a 15-minute break? we'll come back. What were you going to say, Kelly?
Well, 20-mile road march, basic training. They had the vehicles like the Humvees, travel, creeping with us, you know,
Right.
falls off or whatever. Once in a while, they'll slow down. We get on the truck, Griffin? Sure. And he's
What was
doing
it?
this the
What was it
whole
called?
road march.
20-mile road march?
35 pounds of pack.
Whew.
Walking, wanna get on the truck? Nope. Need some water? Yep. So he goes, we get to the end, he must have did this about, so he's no exaggeration, 8 or 10 times. So we get to the end, and he's like, you know I did that. Yeah, I know what you're doing. We're trying to get inside my head. He goes, did it work? I'm like, yeah. I said, the more you asked me, the more I wanted to finish. He goes, why don't you get up to the Indian line? You know, you little guy, you know, you did up this road march. I'm like, no. And he just kind of nodded. He goes, all right. But yeah, I mean, just wasn't much of a conversation.
Right,
We just,
right.
just kind of,
Commercial looks like for us.
I've never seen.
kind of did that reverse psychology.
Yep. Yep.
Never
Well.
seen a commercial for.
Hey.
The mic and the mic.
Yeah. Power
Come on, man. Well, you got the
Yeah, you got the setup going.
the outfit going. Plaid shirt. You got some really cool socks that Mike here is very envious of.
Yeah.
Man, look. Got them hay dudes I can wear without socks, nice and comfortable. Airing the feet out.
Yeah,
man.
I had to do that today. It's going to be 85.
Man, brother.
And I think Wednesday, I think it's supposed to get up to 95.
Really? Wow.
That's crazy. 95.
I'll tell you, these Columbia pants are one of my best investments ever. I love them.
Yeah.
They're really like,
They breathe?
breathe really well.
That's cool. Isles, baby. Ooh, man, he got me low, man. You know what? I'm going to take him out back. What do you think, Janice? Who are you going to vote for?
Oh, I would have to say Pascal.
See? She knows. Well, I could say who signs the checks, but no, I don't sign those. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I was reading this book. You know, it's just, you know, it's funny after you've been around for a minute. It's really just reestablishing it. You got things. That's why I think a lot of these things, a lot of things are, to me anyways, reestablishing things I've been told. And then I stopped trusting certain people.
Right.
But then it was like, okay, now, you know, the wall went up between me and what I learned from them. And it was like, okay, if you're untrustworthy on this and this and that, I'm not gonna trust anything. So then the wall
Right.
went up for everybody. So then it's, you know, which ones are, you know, finding the truth back out again.
Right. Yeah, I did
And,
that.
but I used to always think it was a bad thing, but I mean, it's just, once again, it's just not bad because you've got to use whatever the best talent you have is and expand on that. And yeah, you can do, maybe it's just too, grow up in the country. You gotta rely on yourself to pretty much do everything. But when you're part of a community, you're in a community, you're not complete isolation. You advance because you can come together. Hey, you're really good at this. Hey, you're really good at that. Hey, you're really good at that. And together, you all
Right.
do this. You know, it's like having a huge mansion. Okay, well, you need people to be on game with everything, or else it's not going to be a nice mansion. It's going to be a crap hole, like Bruce Wayne. You want to be in his mansion? Well, yeah.
Man, you gonna talk about Bruce like that? Uh-oh.
Gone.
He lost his phone.
Ain't gonna work without them cell phones.
Can't live without the phone. Man. If you become an intern, get that phone back, man. That's life. It's like if I become an intern, my phone's gonna stay in this room when I'm on shift.
Never been a phone guy.
Yeah, got into an altercation already this morning, dude. Ain't even been back up past for a full day, dude.
Oh, you want to pass?
Yeah, when I passed this weekend.
How'd that to pick somebody up from where they're at. If not, then it's just gossip. You shouldn't be doing it. If it's not actually to help bring somebody up, then don't do it.
Exactly. That's all it is, to gossip. And when you call, and when you call them out on it, they wanna get mad and try to call you out. Oh,
Even
quit taking it offensive, you need to quit. Everything's required when you were on pass.
even if you're saying the truth,
Oh, they don't like
as
it.
long if
Yeah.
it ain't up picking, then it's bad.
Oh, yeah, I was told, oh, you need to chill
Speaking of
out,
updating.
it's not that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not to you, cause you're the one that was gossiping.
You can't tell me how I feel.
Right.
That's what Pastor Sheila has something to
Yeah.
say. No one can tell you how you're gonna feel and how you're gonna react.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you're responsible for your getting, whatever happens afterwards, if you get offended or defensive, however it
Right.
goes, but I just try not to take offense to people's things.
I'm offended that you try not to take offense.
Yeah, I mean, Ken's the worst
People
one.
being offensive.
Oh, I bet.
He's the biggest offendable one.
I am offendable.
I tried giving him spiritual money for his playing of the bass,
Yeah.
and then he took offense to it.
Spiritual money.
Well, there's T money over here.
So can I go on and take the money or not?
Is this camera still on?
Yeah, so is that microphone that picks up everything.
Sweet. I'm hoping it is.
It's not recording, but it's on, oh yeah, it is recording, actually. It is recording.
I think our Life Challenge Ministries vehicle should be the panel bus.
Yep.
Because, Revelations 21:5, it's new things, not things new, not new things. So we can take the old Rusto mod, restore it, and, it's, scripture on wheels. Right? Scripture on wheels.
Yeah, he's coming up there to head you guys up.
Has he ever been up there? You gotta jump all over your eyebrow. Oh, this one, oh.
He's never been to our,
Other one. How was it? Dust ball or whatever it was.
He'll be there tomorrow.
dude, he'll like it, man.
My kids live so close, I go up there tomorrow.
Gone, you got it, yep.
Yeah, it looked like a big huge top. Hey, where's your name tag? How did you not get?
I've never had a name tag.
Staff, man. How
They've never
long-
gave me one.
Man,
They told me I wasn't allowed to have one. Nobody needs to know who I am.
Oh, you know what?
Bonds has had one forever, ever since I've been here. I became an intern, they said, go upstairs, get your name tag. I said, I'm here to get my name tag. She said, I ain't got one for you. I said, okay.
That ain't bad.
I became staff, they said, go get your name tag changed to staff. I said, what name tag? They said, your intern one, hand that one in and get your staff one. I'm like, I don't have one of them.
See, Talon could take that clipping on and walk around. Some new guy could come in, he wouldn't even know any different.
And that's coming
you like about it?
Like cars.
You do?
Panel
car?
bus, the panel
Panel
bus,
cars.
bus thing.
Was that 1940s?
Are you a car kind of guy, Talon?
A little bit, but
Yeah.
I just drive it out of lessons, I like them.
Okay, cool. Cool. And Joe, is he envious of that shirt?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I used to not sure, but it reminds me of the car in the movie Hoffa. Did you ever spin the Hoffa? You know, the camping in the woods?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, it's one of it looks just like the car that was driving.
Me and Joe and Chris got our rings.
You got a what?
Our rings, our Reebok launch rings.
Oh, let me see.
Life we love.
So they give you a ring?
Yeah, when you drag grip on it.
Sweet. How was that?
It was not always very emotional. I like a lot of things off the chest.
Yeah.
We
It
dedicated
was good.
So who was in it?
me, Joe, and Chris North.
Just the three of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Tom was supposed to be in it, but he left. It was
Okay.
supposed to be 2 hours.
Okay. Huh. All right. Okay. Brandon, you ready, baby? Let's do it, man. Anyone else like Brandon?
Yes.
No, no, I'm joking.
They love you, Brandon.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I like you, Brandon. You're a good guy.
So we mentioned two things under the importance of relatability. The success of the mission rests to a large degree upon the quality of the relationships. And, you know, in my world, all too many pastors have failed because they did not take the time or use the energy to improve on relationships. And they can be godly people, gifted people. It's not an integrity matter, but they did not understand the importance of relationships. And number two, we said that you can impress people from a distance, but you can only what? Impact them up close. I don't know that any of you would say of the people who have impacted you, I don't know that too many of you would say somebody, you know, of history or someone you've never met. You know, in Robert's case, the people that impacted him most are just a group in part of nameless, just men in recovery, and just the impact they had on him. The people that impacted me are the people that got into my life and made time for me. So let's look at learning to relate well. Learning to relate well demands that we see others in a certain way. That we see others in a certain way. Only when we value others will we treat them with love and respect. So it begins with, how do you see other people? I know that doesn't sound too earth-shaking, but just stay with me. I think we're going to press this in ways that might get some of us uncomfortable. Only again when we value others will we treat them with love and respect. And so I call this the perspective principle. How you see others determines how you treat others. How you see others determines how you treat others. So do you see others first as good and noble, or corrupt and evil? How many have ever seen this acronym? TULIP. How many have seen that?
Yeah.
It is an acronym used in Reformed theology. I'm not here to defend, speak well or negatively of Reformed theology. John Calvin might be considered, quote, not really the founder, but the pioneer of Reformed theology back in the 1600s, 1500s, 16th century. In this acronym, this is how this theological system begins. Total what? Depravity. This was a system that I anchored my life on for probably 25 years ago. I do not anymore. There are a lot of good things in Reformed theology, many things that are helpful, many things that I really believe. But my anthropology, anyone know what anthropology is? Study of humans. My anthropology does not begin with total depravity. Where do we learn of total depravity in the Bible? What's the great chapter called the fall? The fall of Adam and Eve. Genesis what? What? 3. Well, what comes before Genesis 3? 1 and 2. And what do we learn in 1 and 2? That everything God made was what? Good. It was good. I don't deny the bad, the evil, the fallenness of our nature. But I don't think we should begin with total depravity. We begin with total goodness. God makes, the light, let there be light, right? First thing he did. And he saw that it was good. Next day he creates more, saw that it was good. And we continue through the creation account, Danny. It's good. It's good. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's glorious. So, when you look at people, this is a challenging question. When you look at people, do you see goodness or badness? What's your default? Some people have a default because of their histories, their temperament, their personality. It's a default of suspicion, untrustworthiness. A person's got something up his sleeve or her sleeve. Where's the spin? That's some people's default. Other people have and it's a continuum, right? When I say continuum, I mean it can be hardcore over here, it can be hardcore over here, it can be more over here, it could be more over here, it can be more moderate in the middle. But some people, man, their bent is really extreme. And it all depends on the things I've mentioned, coupled with their theology, their theological system. How do they see people? There's a bunch of cons. There's a bunch of hustlers. Or there's a bunch of wonderful people made in the image of God. How do you think vision then impacts your treatment of people? Really does. It impacts incredibly how we interact with others, how we communicate to them. Let me just press this a little further. Good, he's moving, I trust. Good, good, good. many remember the story of Jesus and the woman caught in adultery?
Yes.
John chapter 8. Go there a second. I want you to see something. Now in verse 4, we've got these accusers. Let's just shut those windows until he's out of there or she's out of there, whoever's driving. That's cool. Thanks, guys. Well, okay. Good work. Thank you. And thank God for these people. I was actually wondering, man, when are they going to get to that spot? So that's cool. That's cool. If you notice, we've got this woman who's been caught in adultery, and they have her standing. It's an act of shame. And Jesus, he's just awesome. It mentions twice, by the way, he stoops. He stoops and gets down. So here she is standing in front of everyone. Jesus assumes a place of humility and stoops. I have to do a lot of that now with my granddaughter. I have to get down on the floor and stoop. Just be with her. So Jesus stoops. But this is what I want you to see. How did Jesus see her? These people, these accusers, saw her as dirty, as foul, as a slut, as a whore. Notice how Jesus addresses her. Verse 10. How does he address her? Woman. Anastasia, I take that to mean ma'am. Miss. I love how Pastor Sheila addresses people many times. Miss so-and-so, Mr. so-and-so. It's a way of bringing dignity to a person. This was a woman. Ma'am. Not a you or hey, ma'am. Ma'am. How do you see people? Are we so empowered by the gospel that we are disposed to continue believing in another's miraculously granted goodness and to therefore find delight in the other, no matter what degree of ugliness we encounter? How do we see people? Now I want to press this. No, it's not there. Shoot. How do we see people? Okay. I thought I had this. Do you see guys or do you see gays? Just be careful. Just these are rhetorical questions. Oh, there's a bunch of gay guys. Man, don't ever. Do you see the gay first or do you see humans? Guys. Oh, there's a hustler. What's your default? Because your default is going to be reflected in how you treat others. Man, that's someone's daughter. That's someone's son. That's someone's daddy. And it's an old drunk. I've seen those types. I have to watch myself. You can get jaded quickly. But how do you see people? It's perspective. I saw your hand. That's why, by the way, language is so critical. Language can be used to dismiss and dehumanize. That's why Jesus had strong words about calling someone an idiot, a fool. You've just categorically wiped them out from the field in the category of human beings, and you've lumped them into there's a bunch of fools. And if I see them as a bunch of fools, a bunch of idiots, a bunch of ding-dongs, a bunch of jerks, it's going to impact how I treat them, will it not? As opposed to there's some human beings created by God for whom Jesus died. How do you see people? I confess back when, your mom and I, Brandon, were in the same college and career group. And I can remember just in my youthful naivety, I'm in my late teens, early 20s, zealous for the Lord. Man, let's go get some pagans today for Jesus. Let's go tell some heathens about the Lord. Come on, anyone with me? And I'm appalled that I could have referred to people like that. There's some pagans. We're going fishing today. Ah, that's awful. That's evil. You hear what I'm saying? Heathens. I think it's Brian McLaren. He challenges in one of his books, I think it's on evangelism, rather than say, hey, we're going to, go get some lost ones today, we're going after some treasured ones today. Treasured men and women that maybe have lost their way, but treasured ones, valued ones, loved ones, not a bunch of heathens and pagans. That's dismissive. And it opens the door for disrespect. It does. It begins to open the door toward treating people in ways that are less than kind and loving and respectful. Does that make sense to you? How do we see people? Oh, there's a drunk, there's a druggie, there's an addict. Yeah, I've seen those before. It will slant you. As opposed to, if there's a precious man of God, call it out in them. That's what Jesus was able to do. He didn't see a pebble. He saw a rock. I'm referring to Simon Peter, right? He saw the rock in him. He saw the goodness. He didn't see, the fact that this dude would, go rogue several times and cripple under pressure. He saw a rock and he spoke it. And he treated him accordingly. And eventually Peter rose to how Jesus identified him and spoke to him. Rather than, there's a jerk, there's a loser. Anastasia?
Well, you kind of hit on it just now. I feel like sometimes because we are like addicts in recovery, that we carry this certain stigma, and the world just tends to look at us and label us as like untrustworthy or anything like that. And then I come here and all of a sudden we're treated as human beings, like with so much respect. It almost puts me on like the defense, like waiting for them to start treating me like everyone else in this world does. And it never happened. It's just like, I don't know.
Thank you. Bruce?
The whole time you were talking, I was just
Can you talk just a little louder?
The whole time you were talking, I was sitting here really just kind of mulling over that whole, just the last like 3 or 4 minutes of you speaking. And then to Anastasia's point,
change that. And I shouldn't expect people to look at me differently. So I accept that. And a part of dealing with individuals and people, and this is just something that I struggle with, because I've been hurt so many times by just giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. Just, so there's that place in between where it's, okay, I'm not viewing you a certain way, but I'm also trying to guard myself because I don't want to be hurt. So it's not so much about you, but it's about my experience and what I don't want to feel, what I don't want to deal with. So a lot of times the situation is not that I'm calling you this, I'm calling you that, but my experience, you know what I mean, I'm going into the situation with that also.
Your experience with others and your experience with your own self
Exactly. So,
creates a certain kind of grid through which you see others.
right. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
and that's the trouble. God is leading me forward, and He's opening me up in certain areas. But I also have to have, I believe, I have to have that balance for myself and for those that I'm even dealing with. So I think there's a certain amount of truth. I can see something because I've been there, I've experienced it. So I may not be calling you that. I'm not putting that on you, but I still have to have a certain amount of wisdom in dealing with individuals just because of me.
And I think that as you and I grow in love and respect for ourselves, as we grow in confidence in the newfound identity we have in Christ, as we appropriate more and more His forgiveness and His justification, that lends itself to seeing others with new eyes, because we can't help but project our own image of ourselves onto others. So when someone, for instance, just has a problem trusting others, and that's their default, I try not to ever take that personally. They don't trust me. Man, what have I done? I tried to prove, man, I got all these years. It hasn't been perfect, but I have integrity, okay? I try not to take it personal because they are projecting their own doubt about themselves, their own disgust with themselves, their own anger, their own frustration, and they're projecting it. So it's not real. And that helps me to deal with those that just, they've got an attitude. But it is so, again, critical. My dad used to run Kroger's out in Wyoming, Michigan, outside of Grand Rapids. It was a superstore, one that Cincinnati, the headquarters of Kroger's, would send people to train under. My dad got high in that before he was called into the ministry. And we've had lots of talks about leadership, of course. And I remember one discussion, he said his best cashiers always bounced a check or two. This is in the day when people would write checks more than the cards. And I said, why is that? What correlation is there between bouncing a check and being a good cashier? He said, my best cashiers, they're not sloppy, but they go into the customer relationship with a spirit of trustworthiness. And I'm going to treat you as a person who's trustworthy. And he said, customers feel whether or not they are trusted. And 9 times out of 10, if you treat them as trustworthy, it's true, by the way, when you deal in a ministry like this, 9 times out of 10, people will live up to your expectations. But if you look at them with suspicion, people feel that. They sense that, and they'll prove you right. It's self-fulfilling prophecies, right? And so the healing of it begins with just learning to appropriate the gospel in my own life. So my default isn't one, and it's important, by the way, that we become self-aware, that we become honest with ourselves. I appreciated what you said. We've got to really, what is my default? Is my default, does it tend toward this side? I'm suspicious, doubtful, is another scam up his sleeve or her sleeve? Or is my default more? And I'm arguing that it's better to have this default. I worry about staff who repeatedly are like the Monday quarterbacks. I saw that coming. I knew that was coming. When I hear that often, I'm not impressed, actually. I like to hear every now and then, man, I just didn't see that coming. Missed that. Good. You believed the best. And you were hoping for the best. Yeah. Once in a while you get burned. You see what I'm saying? And it's again, how do you view people? Is your bent toward their negative, the depraved part of their nature? Or is your bent toward the divine part of their nature? Kevin, you actually said this a few weeks ago in your paper when I asked 3 questions of staff members. I forgot the last question, but you said something to this effect. I enjoy calling out, these are my words, the Christ in people, the divine nature in people. There's a diamond in each person here, and I'm going to go looking for it. He who seeks good finds good. That's what the Proverbs write. But if I'm always looking for bad, guess what I'm going to find? Bad. And what do you and I need most? Think about it. Coming into this program, do you need people continuing to hold you with suspicion and doubt, or do you need people believing in you and believing the best? What? Believe in the best. How do you see others? And again, we're arguing how you see others really is reflective of how you see yourself. So it begins with that inner transformation. And as that happens, automatically you start to see others differently. And the world, by the way, becomes a much more habitable place, a much more friendly place. And you find yourself being more effective with people. Because they smell it. They really do. I do interviews with people. Can I tell you one thing I work hard at is when I interview someone, I try to find something positive about that person. I've looked at your application. You're quite a worker here. Wow, you've got multiple skills. Or I learned this from another mentor of mine. This person had filled out the application. This is when we didn't do it online. Filled it out in his handwriting. You heard me say this, some of you. And the interviewer said, "My, you have good handwriting." And that guy, months later, gave testimony to that. That was like the thing that was the game changer in the interview. Someone paid him an authentic, true compliment. An old man, it was Brother John Drysdale. God rest his soul. And he had that deep voice. He was our choir director. And it was with Dane Kemp. Dane was probably 6'5", had probably size 20 shoe. Okay, he was a big guy. And Brother John was a big, big man. And he said, "Dane, you have beautiful handwriting." An old guy, that called out something good, looking for good. Okay. Learning a few things, we picking up. So let's go to the next principle. The next principle, relating effectively with others demands that we touch others in a certain way. that we touch others in a certain way. And it's called the warmth principle. Your temperature determines how close others will come toward you. Your temperature. Do I have any dog lovers out there? Raise your hand. Can dogs pick up vibe? They can. And where there is a warmth, even if that dog is anxious, uptight, barking away, you know, you can come at it aggressively and mean, or you can come at it in a very gracious, peaceful way. And 9 times out of 10, you can dismantle that ornery dog. Can't you? Ah, this person's approachable. This person is not a threat. It's the warmth principle. Some people, just because of the vibes they send, it's a stiff arm vibe. The coldness. And other people, they communicate an approachability. I can talk to that person, I bet. It's the warmth principle. So we're talking about 2 principles here. One is the perspective principle. How you see others determines how you treat others. The warmth principle is your temperature determines how close others will get towards you. I'm not going to give that example. So what kind of vibe are you sending? What kind of aura do you radiate? And again, you can't fake it. You'll be found out sooner than later if you're just faking it. But if you really see people a certain way, as man, there's goodness in Joe. There really is. Then you call it out. And you exemplify a warmth. Jesus, can I tell you, you can tell a lot about people, by the way, by how they relate to children. And think about it. More than once, Jesus was criticized for hanging with who? Kids. Kids pick up whether someone is approachable or not. Correct? I mean, they just pick it up. This person is someone I can go to. This person, whoa, I don't think I want to. Kids pick that up. And Jesus, man, talk about approachable. So approachable, everybody's clamoring to touch him. Man, people who were marginalized, who were stigmatized, who were put on the fringes, they felt the nerve, the pluck to press in. Maybe this man won't reject me. You know, starting Mark 1, the leper. You know, generally, right, these lepers had to call out leper, 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 and people had to stay X feet away from them. They had to. This man felt at least the courage to attempt to get close because there was something right away that communicated that Jesus was approachable. There was a warmth to him. Let's go to the next page, and then we can talk more about this. Number 3. So there's 4 principles here. Relating effectively with others. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay? Relating effectively with others demands that we hear others in a certain way. That we hear others. That we listen to them. Number 3, excuse me. Number 3 is listen. Sorry about that. Relating effectively with others demands that we listen to them. One of the greatest needs of a human being is to regard himself as worthwhile or significant. and listening to others helps satisfy this need. People long to be heard. So last Thursday, I showed you a clip of the Admiral McRaven commencement speech, Make Your Bed. Remember that?
Yes.
And I told you that I was in a live Zoom meeting with him a few years ago with fellow Teen Challenge directors across the country. Let me just give you a little more bio of McRaven, because I think you'll appreciate what I'll say after you understand who he was and who he is. He was the one who oversaw the 2011 Navy SEAL raid in Pakistan that killed Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. He oversaw that operation. And he also led the rescue of Captain Phillips. How many have seen Tom Hanks in Captain Phillips? Admiral McRaven was the one in charge of the extraction of Captain Phillips, a true story, who was held hostage by Somali pirates after the 2009 hijacking of this oil rigger. By the way, someone asked him, I think he was pulling both of those things off, or he pulled off, someone asked him, how was it when you finally were able to substantiate that you got Osama bin Laden? I mean, how'd you feel? And I'll never forget Admiral McRaven's answer, and this was live. He said, in his own humble way, he said, you know, I had 10 other operations going on at the same time, so I really didn't have time to really think much about it. That's a man just given to the mission and not the euphoria of success. He said, I had 9 other or 10 other missions going on at the same time that I had to pay careful attention to. So, in this meeting, by the way, it was April 28, 2020. COVID officially started what month of 2020? March. So a month into COVID, in this live meeting, it was either one of the directors or the facilitator of the meeting asked, what are the traits of an exceptional leader? And Admiral McRaven's very first response, I was taking copious notes, was this: the best leaders are the ones who listen. The best leadership trait a leader can have is that of listening. And I think I said last week he served under 4 or 5 presidents. He said the 2 presidents of the ones that he served under that were the best listeners were on different political divides. One was George W. Bush, and the other was Barack Obama. He said they were very good listeners. They would gather their information from, their cabinet members and from other officials, and they would carefully just analyze and interpret the data before they made decisions. They didn't snap and make quick decisions. They were good listeners. Isn't that a wonderful thing, by the way, to be remembered for?
Yes.
And here's a man who made it to the top in his field, and he said the most important quality of a leader is someone who listens well. There's a story that I came along years ago. Let me read it to you. A family sat down in a restaurant and contemplated the menu. After taking the grown-up's order, the waitress turned to the 7-year-old boy and asked what he'd like. Up to this point in his life, no one had ever cared to know, so he hesitated. And before he uttered a sound, his mother answered, "Oh, Junior will have cream chip beef on whole wheat toast." The waitress's eyes never left the boy. would you like a hamburger? Yes. Would you like cheese on it? Yes. Ketchup and mustard? Yes. And as the waitress headed toward the kitchen, the kid turned to his folks and exclaimed, I quote, "Gee, she thinks I'm alive." I wonder how that impacted her tip that day. Good waitress, good waiter, good clerk, good boss will do what? Listen, listen, listen. I've got work to do. I got work to do in all these areas. I got work to do in this area. Finally, let's talk about the next one, number 4. Relating effectively with others demands that we speak to them in a certain way, sincerely and meaningfully. The shortest distance to a person's heart is through your tongue. And we call this the word principle. Words have great power for good and for bad. Words have the power to change a person's perspective. Words have the power to determine the whole course of human existence. So, some of you know my story. I may be one of the few, at least in this room, who never went through a time of, what am I going to do when I grow up? Roughly 13, 14, what else was I going to do? I'm going to work at a teen challenge. So I prepared, went to Bible school, went to seminary, and in 1988 joined my dad, who was the director here. And that summer, it was May, the last part of May 1988, that summer was not what I expected. Within about 2 months, I began to have incredible self-doubt. And it was quite upsetting because for the last 10 years, which was like half of my life, I'd been thinking, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And, you know, I was being challenged in ways that I didn't anticipate. I came in thinking I had an edge. Not because my dad was the director. He didn't treat me, so I thought. I don't know what others thought with any kind of favor. But I thought I had an edge. I grew up at a teen challenge. I grew up with 28 recovering addicts, okay? That was my life. So I thought, okay, I kind of know the business, and, you know, I've sat around the supper table and listened to Dad and Mom talk, and I kind of have a sense, and now I've been academically trained, and wow, I found myself completely out of my league. I remember one of the guys I was trying to, quote, counsel, and here I'd taken, you know, courses. He was a Vietnam veteran with post-traumatic. He's talking to me. I'm kind of getting scared. I go, he smokes. This dude might, you know, do something. Starting with me. And I can remember just dumbfounded. I don't know what to, I don't even know. And man, I was trying to teach people, and I just felt like, maybe I missed it. I took a wrong turn. And someone spoke life into me. He actually is a staff pastor at, used to be Temple Baptist. You know which one I'm talking about? It's right off Telegraph, Joy. It's where, Detroit World Outreach, thank you. He's still there. Pastor Mike. And he was a GED instructor here at that time. And I still remember, he's a really intense guy. You think I'm intense. He's super charged. And I don't know what triggered him to say this except the Holy Spirit. He went to me, I'm 24 years old, maybe 25, 24. Looked like I was about 20 at that time. Okay? And he looked at me and he said, Jeff, you are God's anointed. That got me through for the next 3-4 years. No matter what anyone thinks, oh, that's just the director's kid. And, you know, what does he know about addiction? He's never been on drugs. He's never used, that was the big charge too. What do you know? You were raised in royalty, you never went through all this. And it created, a sense of insecurity in me. And when he breathed that in me, and he said it like he meant it, those were words of life. And they kept me going through those early years were very difficult for me. It took a good probably 6-7 years for me to find my groove. Really did. I was just like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. Thankfully I had kids, so that was my distraction. I don't have to think about this all the time. Push through it, but man, those words, you're God's anointed. He didn't say it to me, by the way, after I preached, a message that could have converted 3,000 people. You know what I'm saying? He didn't say it after I did something heroic, not that I did, but he said, you're God's anointed. It's the word principle, speaking life into people, not flattery. That does no one any good. But finding words and words that bring life to people. Words have the power to kill. They also have the power to do what? To build and create life. How did God create the world? He spoke it into existence. Just out of curiosity, and just be mindful of the time here, can any of you think of some words, maybe recently or long ago, life words that someone spoke into your soul that served to maybe keep you from completely self-destructing, that maybe served to, move you forward? Mike?
And my dad told me since I was a little kid, and you always doubt yourself that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. And he always told me, he goes, because I didn't like reading, I still don't like reading today, but he goes, if somebody else can do it, so can you. He goes, you might just lack knowledge, a little wisdom, but he goes, put yourself around the right people, humble yourself, listen to them, he goes, and you can achieve more than they can. And I was like, and that has literally stuck with me.
That's
I think
good.
about that everywhere.
That's good.
Because then it's just almost like I almost do it naturally, end up in these spots, and I always go right back to that moment. It's like, because I knew I don't like to read, so put myself around people I can trust.
But if anybody else can do it,
Yes,
Mike can do it.
that's right.
Words of life. Anyone else?
I was told I had a purpose and that God was going to finish what he started.
You don't have to mention the person, but do you recall the person who spoke that to you?
It was a spiritual father I had at church.
Words came at the right time. Words spoken at the right time, words of wisdom and goodness are like apples of gold in settings of Joe?
My fourth grade teacher, somebody said with the way he speaks, you'd think he's smart, but he can't read. And my third grade teacher said, this kid is brilliant. He just has a little bit of problems with reading. And I took that.
You remembered that.
I remember that.
This kid is brilliant. Who's that that black lady who plays in The Help? She's the maid. What'd she say to that little baby? You was kind. You was good. He was important. Did you have your hand up, Robert?
Yeah, I remember years ago I built this cross right on the back of a mountain bike. I remember going to the store store. She follows me out of the store, and then says, you know, you're a freak. We don't eat people. We don't. You're what's wrong with this world. And then 3 days later, the woman slammed on her brakes and jumped out of her car and said, "The news warned me about people like you. You don't belong in this city. You don't live here," which she didn't know I did live here. But she goes, "You don't belong here. You're a freak." And then I felt really like my test. But what made the difference is, as a volunteer here at Light Challenge, a woman came up to me when I was mowing lawn. She said, "I'm gonna tell you something. God put on my heart to tell you this. You know, for what you were doing with that cross, going out and talking to people, no matter what you go through in this world, young man, you are one of the greatest men I've ever met in this life because you have courage to do the right thing and don't ever stop doing what you're doing."
Love it.
And that's a true story, and God is wonderful. He
Man.
took care of me.
Man,
Nice.
in the wake of being, you know, cut at the knees, man, that's beautiful.
9 out of 10 people stop me with their kids and stuff, and for one bad person I meet, people are generally wonderful people in this town. 9 out of 10 people have an intimate, awesome talk about God with me. Sometimes they pull me over so that they can preach to me. That happens once in a while. It blows my mind.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Kelly, you had your hand up?
Yeah, you remember Pastor Kurt Milano?
Yes, yeah.
He was teaching our Romans class, the Romans expository teacher when I was a student, and the way he dissected Romans 6 was basically, you're a child of God, step into it, step out of death into life. Or I forget the exact words he used, but it's like one of those dropping in my head moments.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's true.
yeah, that's good.
But the way he said, I wish I remember the word.
That's good.
Walk into that reality.
You kind of just triggered a thought. Pastor Luke, your former boss, who's now and was your father-in-law, how does he often refer to the congregation?
Dear ones.
Dear ones.
Dear ones, beloved.
And again, a 40-year-old can't say that, but someone who's moving towards 70, who's been there close to 2 decades, right? Who's time tested. When he says that, it's affectionate. You don't take that as disrespectful. Dear ones. Dear ones. Paul had a way of speaking life into people. Go to that addendum a second. Some of you know the name John Eldridge. He got on the radar when he wrote some books. Wild at Heart, that was his big claim to fame. Decent book, okay? Some good things in there. And he's written some other books. He contends that every boy wants to know one thing from his father. And again, he's not saying this with absolute, no, this is just the one thing, this is the silver bullet, okay? So he's oversimplifying to stress something. He says every boy wants to hear this. Okay, every boy wants to know one thing from his father, and it's in a question form. I'm going to redo this next time. Do I have what it takes? That's what every boy is asking. Do I have what it takes? Write that in the first blank. And every girl wants to know from her father the answer to this question: am I lovely? Or am I beautiful? Every young man wants to know the answer. Do I have what it takes? And every girl wants to know the answer to, am I lovely? Am I beautiful? And he writes, I'm going to make fathering very simple. Answer your child's question. Answer to your son. Yes, you have what it takes. You have what it takes. You have what it takes. maybe you don't have or didn't have a father. May God, if he hasn't, raise up someone who can be like a surrogate father to you, a spiritual, as it were, father. Was that a spiritual father that spoke that to you?
He was my mentor the first time I was here in the program.
That's good. And you know, men have an edge with men in that area. A man needs to hear that from another man. A man that they respect. You do have what it takes. And to that little girl, what does she need to hear from her father in many and several ways? You are beautiful. You're beautiful. You're lovely. And if you don't have a father, didn't have a father, I don't know what your situations are, ladies. May God raise up a godly, older man to be able to speak that. Those are words of life. Words of life. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And leaders understand that whatever their context. They're not about flattering others. They're not about being liked at all costs. Remember I said if you need them, you can't lead them if you need them. You can't. Let me wrap this up. Loving those you lead. You can lead people by relating well, but not truly loving them. Hold on before you throw tomatoes at me. However, if you are to lead as a Christ follower, you have an obligation to both not only relate well to those you serve, but to actually what? Love them. Anyone see the difference?
Absolutely.
This is more than, if you're a Christ follower, learning the tricks, quote, of the trade and trying to be as authentic as you can by learning relational skills, smiling and, engaging people, endeavoring to be as sincere as you can. It's about loving people. As I said in my message yesterday, there are certain people in my family that if they weren't family, I don't know that I would want to go to Starbucks with them. And I found it not unsurprising. Most of you can relate to that, right? But I don't like that. I'm called to love people, each and every person. There are some people in this program right now, and everyone, you can say this, there are some people that are easier to like than other people. And maybe we all have a difference there, But we're called to love them all. If Jesus can love hardcore, elephants and hardcore donkeys, hardcore, blues and hardcore reds, if he can love Trump fans and he can love Biden fans, I'm just trying to make it real here and really love them. You can too, through him. I'll never forget what Marty Roman, he was a missionary. You can see that at the end. I'll fill in that last blank. But he was here for a missions conference probably 20-some years ago. Just an unassuming guy. Just nothing flamboyant, nothing that would, wow, I got to get him to do the next, pastor's conference. He worked with people in Africa, and I was still really wet behind the ears, and so I was paying careful attention to him, and he said, if you love people, they'll put up with a lot. That's true. If you love people, boy, what some of the staff have had to put up with me. Hopefully, in part, they were able to do so, to stay the course, because they knew warts and all, I really do love them and want them to succeed and want this ministry to succeed, want to carry out the mission of helping people become all that they're called to be. If you love them, they'll put up with a lot. And as we go through more of this leadership course, there will be times maybe you feel kind of really handcuffed and maybe intimidated. Wow, I'm not good at that. ISUCK in that area. Gee. I didn't say it, okay? But you ever feel that way, right? Man. Just remember, Johnny, people will put up with a whole lot if they know you really do love them and care for them and want their best. As clumsy-footed as you might be, or as I might be. What is love? Let me finish it. What is love? Love is an unswerving commitment to another's well-being. Do I have to write that down? Love is unswerving commitment to another's what? Well-being. That's what love is. You're committed to that person's flourishing. And love is doing the best you can in the role that you have to promote someone's well-being, to promote their flourishing, abundance in their life. And you do what you can in your position, in your role, to do that. I'm thankful. My dad, he is definitely aging. And one day I will, if my life plays out, and be much more limited. But he's committed to his son's well-being. And you know how he acts on that? He prays for me. Bruce, I have a few people that I know of that pray for me every day. I had a couple of older ladies. I did one's funeral and the other I attended, but they prayed for me every day too, older ladies. And my dad said, I'll pray for you, son, and I do every day until I'm either demented or dead. So that's how he expresses his commitment. He's not able to do much with me anymore and contribute in other ways, like he used to, you know? That's okay. So you just have to figure out what you have in your pocket and pull it out. And for right at this stage now with my dad, what does he pull out of his pocket? He pulls out the prayers. And that's something you'll always have in your pocket, won't you? So you pray for others and their flourishing, their well-being. And as best you can, as resourced as you are, you act out on it. You speak into their life. You listen to them. You touch them in certain ways. And in so doing, you help others move forward. And the goal is to help them become more and more aligned to God's mission of bringing his healing to others. Amen? So I've got some assignments for you, I guess. You can start looking at that next week. I'm going to talk about vision. And I'm going to talk about dreaming and the importance that vision is in leadership. Whatever your context, being able to have vision, okay? And that will look differently. And I'm going to talk about visioneering. It's a term that Andy Stanley, what's the name of his church? North Atlanta? North Point. He's just a great speaker, podcaster, a great author, great pastor. He has an older book called Visioneering, and I have launched from that and kind of developed my own way of, okay, how can we develop in our capacities to dream and envision wherever we are, whoever we are, in whatever context we are. That's what leadership is, helping people move towards something better, right? And ultimately that better is God's dream. How can we participate in helping people realize God's dream for them? So Lord, thank you for this time. Bless, Lord, my brothers and my sisters and the families that they represent. Help us to be the best we can possibly be for the glory of your name. Amen.